all signs point to this, as a huge report indicates a lot more than we expected out of the roster battles in a position group that seemed set in stone just a few months ago, as training camp and preseason are right around the corner for these bouts and roster battles to take place. We're going to break down all that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first, if you're a part of the nearly 58% of viewers who aren't yet subscribed yet, you want to stay up to date on all things Canucks, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the updates as they drop. And with that, let's hop right into it, which is defensive roster battle. So the New York Times put out an article talking about the Vancouver Canucks roster and who is sure shots, outside chances, or just dark horse wildcards to make the Vancouver Canucks 23-man roster. Now, a few of them that we're going to touch on in this video is focusing on the defensive front, with one of them that is a sure shot being Elias Pettersson, the defender. Pettersson, the defender, is referred to internally as PD Jr., as we've all seen, and has emerged as one of the organization's most prized prospects. Pettersson will have more than an inside track to make this team at training camp. In fact, I'd expect the organization to give him a long look in penalty-killing situations during camp and throughout the preseason. There's a tell in that the organization's goal isn't for PD Jr. to make the 23-man roster, it's for him to prove that he's capable of being a regular NHL contributor. And when you look at our starting defenseman from last year, he was on that. He was one of the few that he's the only one on this list that we're going to be talking about that was on the defensive starting six last year, and he is absolutely going to be a part of that, especially if they are putting him on the penalty kill. It goes to show that they have a lot of faith in him, especially Adam Foote, and what they have going within this penalty kill special teams unit that they're trying to build. Having him and Marcus Pettersson on there at the same time will probably bode pretty well for Vancouver's penalty kill chances, and try not to give up as many shorthanded goals as they did last year, and just trying to stay out of the box as much as you can this year. That's going to be a huge thing for Vancouver. Discipline, I think, is something that Adam Foote is really going to drive home on these players, because there was a lot of times where we were in the box the past 2 seasons really, and we gave up a lot of goals and lost a lot of games as a result of being in the sin bin one too many times. But there was another one that is seemingly a sure shot to make it, and that is Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Joseph is a depth puck mover with the versatility to play either side. His combination of versatility and experience puts him in the driver's seat to make the opening night 23-man roster as the club's 8th defender, which that'd be really cool to see. Obviously, he brings some veteran presence, and he's been around the league for a decent amount of time, so this is someone that was a recent acquire for the Vancouver Canucks, so we'll be interested to see how he kind of navigates within this. He could be kind of like a Daniel Sprong type, where he's brought in just to see how he fits. If he doesn't fit within the first few games, get him out of there and bring in the next guy, or if he is just able to make a splash in those first couple of games, really kind of prove that he deserves a spot in the starting 6, hey, more power to him, and I'll be happily surprised to see him be another player on this Vancouver Canucks roster that they seemingly bring surprisingly out of people, where they bring in these players that people think, all right, they're not going to do anything, they're going to Vancouver, who cares? But then they end up having a career year, where for some of the top guys at their position, maybe it would be a down year for them, but a career year for them. It goes to show that Vancouver knows how to develop guys and bring the best out of them each and every year so that they can get better and better and better. But this is where it takes a bit of a turn to the competition side of things, where we talked about 2 of the sure shots on defense as far as the other guys that aren't the big name ones, like Quinn Hughes, Filip Hronek, Teddy Beluga, or Marcus Pettersson, and all those guys. These are some of the ones that are a bit more under the radar guys, and that brings us to Tom Willander, the organization's golden goose that they believe is ready to play in the NHL, which is huge right off the bat after just signing that ELC. A sense that the club is planning to amp up the pressure and play a more aggressive defensive system in the D zone this season, which would play to Willander's strengths as a smooth skating defensive defender. The expectation internally is that Willander will win a job in the opening night lineup. So Vancouver Canucks fans, you might not have to wait too much longer to see Tom Willander make his debut in a Vancouver Canucks jersey, not just an Abbotsford Canucks jersey, but a Vancouver one at that. And we are going to hopefully see him on opening night, which would be awesome to see him out there skating. And if he's just someone like Joseph, if he just comes in, makes an impact right off the bat in the same way that DPD did last year, we could be seeing an entirely different Vancouver Canucks defensive core than we saw last season, where you see with these guys, we could have a bunch of shakeup there, where Forbert, maybe he drops out and is only a special teams guy. Myers, with his age, who knows, and his health, that's a big concern too. So there's a lot of things at play here, where Vancouver was heading into this offseason with the biggest question mark being at the forward position. But now we're seeing that as training camp is going to start to unfold, we could see a lot of defensive storylines here, where this defensive starting 6 here, with the exception of Hughes, Hronek, and both Petterssons, we could see a bit of rotation there on the right side of the defense, which will be kind of fun to watch throughout the first third of the season as Vancouver kind of tries to find their identity of who they're going to be this year. But as far as who they're going to be this year, that brings us to a very big question mark on defense, which adds to the competition side of things and these roster battles, and that is Victor Mancini, who has a ton of NHL level tools and plays a premium position. But his decision making could use some work, and he faces some stiff competition, most notably from Willander at Canucks training camp. So already we know that there's going to be a battle going on between these two guys. The 23-year-old Blue Liner is still waiver exempt, and Mancini is also at a stage of his development where he'll be viewed as a better off logging major minutes in Abbotsford as opposed to being a semi-regular healthy scratch as a 7th or 8th option in Vancouver. As a result, the bar he'll have to clear to make the team is even higher than it is for the other depth defenders in Vancouver will be inviting to training camp. So this is going to be a big storyline to watch heading into training camp of Victor Mancini versus Tom Willander, because when you look at the other guys on defense there isn't too much competition as far as guys that we know are going to be AHL regulars. We know where Brisebois, Schultz, Kudratsev is someone who could be somewhat of a surprise at a training camp. Who knows? You got Sawyer Minio there as well. But when you see in the prospects there, Willander and Mancini are absolutely the two biggest ones. And Mancini, it's weird to call him a prospect at 23, but still he is working within this AHL system a lot more in the NHL system. So he was able to contribute a bit on Abbotsford last year. I don't hate the idea of just using him more in Abbotsford and having Willander being the younger guy getting more cracks at the bat. Even though Mancini's going into year 2 of 2 and you still have 2 more years of Willander, so you got more options to see how much you can get out of Willander in that time. But I still think if one of them gets the hot hand, you roll with that hot hand till it goes cold. So whether it's Willander or Mancini coming firing out the gate, you roll with which one of those guys is hitting the hardest, and then once they fizzle out, that's when you switch it up, and then you have more of the kind of dynamic, and you can kind of see where things are, where it could be someone starts the year slow and finds their form mid-season, or the opposite. So you don't know which one it's going to be until really around mid-season form of what these players are going to be, not just in Abbotsford, but also on the big NHL club. But what did you guys think about this article down below? How excited are you for Pierre-Olivier Joseph, for Elias Pettersson, DP, for Tom Willander, and for Victor Mancini? Which storyline are you most interested in seeing coming out of training camp? Is there one that we didn't touch on here that you think is going to be one worth watching in the defensive front? That is going to be a bit of a bigger story. I know we talked briefly on the idea of Kudratsev, where he could be someone that made a lot of noise last training camp, and Patrik Allvin has been very high on him throughout the entire, since then really, and into the offseason, where he's talked in a few interviews and mentioned his name. So that could be somebody that we see make a really big surprise out of training camp. So I'll be interested to see what happens when it all goes down in Penticton, when all the updates are coming. You guys won't want to miss those, so stay tuned to Canucks Digest for that. But that's going to do it for this episode of Canucks Digest. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.